Okay, so if we want to talk about some proofs, I think what would actually be useful before we talk about proof types and proof examples is I think it would be useful to go over a little bit of terminology. When I say terminology, what I mean is I want to think about what's the difference of a theorem versus a proposition versus a lemma. And these are all in the notes, so I'm not going to write this out. But let's think about what's a corollary. Um, so theorem, proposition, lemma, corollary, and then let me think if there's any others that I want to talk about. A conjecture, okay, and then a proof. And so just very quickly, a theorem is going to be some important statement that we want to prove is true. So it's going to be some important statement that there's a proof to. We know it's true. And so the fact that we say theorem means that it's a pretty important thing. So something like, I'm trying to think of a good example of a theorem that we've seen before. Something like in our discussion of cardinality, we talked about Cantor's theorem, right? The word theorem carries some weight to it. That tells you that it's a pretty important thing. And so that's a theorem. It's just an important statement that's true to be proved. A proposition is a lesser important statement. And the line between a theorem and a proposition is totally fuzzy, totally blurry, and it's completely subjective. So when I say proposition, it just means lesser important. It's not the most important theorem. I'm not saying it's not important at all. It's, again, just a very gray line there. A lemma is something that so this is a proposition or a theorem that you use to prove something else. And so we'll have some good examples of lemmas later in the semester, but a lemma is a result that you use to prove a further result. A corollary is going to be a statement that follows easily from a previous theorem or proposition. Okay, sometimes it follows from a lemma, but a corollary is just a statement that follows very easily from something that we've already done before. A conjecture is going to be a statement that we don't know whether it's true or not, but it's a conjecture if most people believe it's true, or really if anyone believes it's true, it's a conjecture. So when people say that there's a conjecture, what they mean is that here's a statement that we think is true, but nobody can prove it. And then a proof is really just kind of a logical deduction. So we're going to start with axioms. I should actually mention what an axiom is as well. So a proof is really a logical deduction starting with axioms that leads us to a justification of a theorem or a proposition. And then when I say an axiom, what I really mean is an assumption. So axioms are the things that we're assuming are true. So these are things like if you add two integers, you get an integer. There's no way to prove that. That's got to be one of our starting points. So that set of starting points is our axioms. Okay, so these I think are the big words that we're going to use as we go through and talk about proofs.